Hi everyone. For this session, we have with us Unmesh Pawar, who is the People Performance and Culture Head at KPMG. And also, he is a sounding board for me on many issues that I bounce off with regard to people management, human resources, and also a lot of leadership. So I thought it was only befitting that the knowledge that I get from Unmesh, I share with all of you too. So let's welcome him. Hi, Unmesh. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Hey, Winnie, good to be here today with you and Team Personage. It's always nice interacting with you and staying engaged with what you guys are doing. So look forward to an interesting conversation.
I'm very sure. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of the responsibilities you shoulder at KPMG, and also what is life in consulting all about?
Great. As you introduced me, I have the responsibility as the partner and head for people, performance, and culture in KPMG. Very simply, it's the head of people or the head of HR for KPMG. We have two large businesses in KPMG in India. We have the KPMG consulting side of our business, and then we have our KGS unit, which is really supports our UK, US markets from India. We have about 25,000 people across both these entities, right? And what we do for our clients really is we do assurance, which is really advising them with respect to their tax related matters. We also do audits. We are one of the leading auditors in the country today. And we also have our advisory practice that really advises our clients on business issues for them. So that's pretty much what we do. Let me respond to your question with respect to what is consulting life all about, right? I think very simply, what do we do in consulting? I think in consulting, very simply, we are either advising the C-suite leadership, we are advising boards, we are advising promoters, founders, with respect to the big picture thinking for their business, right? Which is saying, where is that industry going? What can we do for them? How could they potentially stay ahead of the market? So that's one potential opportunity. We're helping clients with respect to manage their finances better, i.e., their working capital requirements and try and free up cash, especially in times like today. We are helping clients come up with new products in the marketplace, as well as go and enter into new markets, depending on what their growth and expansion strategy is. So that's the whole remit. And I think the other one, which in today's times is becoming more and more relevant, is really around cyber, is really helping our clients with cyber risk and helping them navigate the whole journey to digital. So that's pretty much what a consulting life is. So I think on one side you are doing the big picture thinking with the CEOs and the C-suite, but at this other side you are also deeply entrenched with your clients, helping them drive a big change program or drive a big operational effort that is required of you. So I think if that was to be really looked at, right, then you're looking at people who are comfortable with uncertainty, because clearly we have realized in the last 6 months there's nothing certain about everything that we knew before, right? So people who are very comfortable with uncertainty, who are problem solvers at the core, who get energized and excited with looking at client situations and client problems and look at creative ways around solving them. People who have the ability to gather tremendous amount of data, analyze that data, be able to derive insight from that, and then be able to work with our clients and help solve problems. So that's typically what a consultant does, right? A consultant looks at what data sets are available, looks at the client's environment, and then comes up with ideas and suggestions on things that can be done differently and helps run a program to make that impact happen. So that's what consulting life is. Now, by virtue of that, yes, you need to be willing to work hard, because the predictable element of your job is only that much, right? Because every project is different. You move from project to project. A typical project duration could be anything between 3 months to 3 years if it's a long project, right? So you're moving from project to project, and therefore what every project throws at you is uncertain. You may have a specialization in strategy, you may have a specialization in digital, you may have a specialization in financial risk management, but beyond that, what comes your way, every client's nuance is very different. So therefore, the ability to work hard, the ability to deal with uncertainty, the ability to learn constantly, right? Because you could have been educated at the best B schools, but your real education is on every project, because every project that you do, you're picking up newer learnings and newer approaches and newer insights that you then carry to your next assignment, right? So I think that's a little bit about what a day looks like. But yes, people need to be willing to travel at a short notice. But well, in today's COVID times, that has drastically reduced. But having said that, there could be clients, right, in essential services, if you're supporting the government. So those are businesses where you have no choice but to get out there and work with your client and be willing to support your clients. So I think if you look at it, I think consulting life is meant for people who are driven by speed, who are driven by agility, who like doing different things, right? And don't like the predictable element of their life. So they like to do different things constantly. I think that's a life for, that's the kind of life that people are excited with. So then consulting life is for you.
Wow, that sounds like a really vast gamut of things one gets to do in consulting. I think I always feel that instead of have to, the whole get to opportunities is a much better approach. But that's really huge, and so many people aspire for it, and so many people are preparing for it. I want to know, given that, of course, it gives so many tremendous opportunities and also so many challenges, what is this whole big obsession, or even this whole thing about working for the big four, like the whole pride of the big four consulting firms, and this is where I want to work. um, just tell me a little bit more about it, and are they interchangeable, in all fairness? Like, what is the difference and what is so exciting about it?
So thank you for that question. Clearly, there's a halo, right? That's about the big four, right? So, what is very simply for those of you who don't know, the big four is really the nickname that is used to refer a network of the professional services firms, right? That has KPMG, Deloitte, has EY and PwC as a part of this. Now, if you look at them globally, if you compare them, the network is pretty much comparable. They're relatively similar in people as well as market size, and they do and the work that they do is pretty similar to an extent too, right? I think obviously some may have better capability in certain areas, and that competitive edge everybody keeps working on. But having broadly said that, uh, they all originated as accounting firms that then added on more layers of other forms of consulting around management consulting, risk consulting, and other things. But I think that's what they do. So they look at audit, they look at assurance, they look at taxation, they looked at management consulting, actuarial work, corporate finance. That's the remit that the big four play in. And because you need to understand that the big four is the reduced avatar, if you know, of the big eight that were prevalent towards the late 20th century, right? I think some acquisitions, etc., that happened, some organizations kind of phased out, but this is now the reduced avatar of those big eight that were towards the late century. So, and they're considered prestigious. It's considered prestigious to work with the big four because they have a legacy or a lineage, if you be, of hundred years or more, and therefore there is that excitement of people to work with them.
Also, Unmesh, you were mentioning about how things have changed, right, within the pandemic. While your role included a lot of traveling on the spur of the moment, now it's limited to certain industries that you cater to, where you need to, and other places you don't. What are the other shifts that you are noticing, even with regard to hiring people aspiring for jobs? What are those shifts that are happening that you have noticed, and also that you have, in many ways, you could have led?
Sure. So I think, look, the pandemic has really been a reset, right? And whilst it's been a reset, it also has thrown up a lot of opportunities. I think that's a reality one has to embrace willingly. So if you look at what's changing, and I wouldn't just say what's changed because of the pandemic, but I think if I look at how the business ecosystem has really changed, right? And I talked about life in consulting and what we do in consulting. But in addition to taking care of helping clients take care of their finances, of their people, of their processes, I think what's become more important today, because of all the digital shift or the tectonic shift that we're seeing in technology happen today, organizations are now realized that they need to make that that pivot happened. So therefore, the whole move to the cloud, moving to digital to be able to engage with their consumers in a far more effective and efficient manner. The pivot to AI, leveraging robotics on the factory floor and other places. All of this is coming real. And I think that's where, and that's what's changing, right? So the newer set of skill sets that are being asked compared to the traditional skill sets that one would have been used to. And therefore, what you see is, you and I keep joking about it, that all organizations going forward will be tech organizations, because organizations have no choice but to pivot to technology. But I think that's aggressively happening, and that's the shift that you're starting to see in the last 3-4 years, where you're looking at people with more technology skills, and even in functions like taxation and audit, you are trying to see what can technology do to help you manage those processes, manage those services that you're providing your clients much better. So that's the big shift. I think there's a pivot happening of the consulting business to use technology and digital, and infuse that with digital, because that's what how consumers are being talked to today. That's how you engage consumers effectively today. So that's the big shift that you see right now in the consulting space, as well as in the hiring that you're doing.
Great. And so when you say, I'm just going to dive a little deeper into this, have you had to rewrite your JDs? I mean, is that what's happening?
I think it's an evolving process, Vinny, right? Because I don't think there's a point in time, right? Because the moment you start to see that there's a pivot happening in the industry, and you need to start shifting your clients towards that, then you start to either buy skills that can help you do that, or you mostly the professional services businesses thrive because they have a very strong training agenda. So taking people who may not have the skill set, but grooming them, investing in picking up those skills, is what you typically invest time in. So yes, JDs are changing, but if you look at right now, most consulting companies would ask for people with a stronger bent of mind around tech.
Okay, interesting. Could you also, while we are at it, detail out this whole process of hiring for us?
So I think it's a great question. Look, I think there are two pathways really to enter into a consulting life, right? One mostly is at the entry level, and at entry level, you either would go for college grads or for B school pass outs, right? And both these processes, when you do these processes, of course, people would at the B schools, you would typically, as well as the grad schools now, you would do something called as internships. And internships are a great way for organizations to test out the mettle of the students that are coming in and what they have to offer. And the other important thing is it also gives students a very good perspective, saying, is this life for me, right? Not everybody can adjust to or be excited with the consulting life. And the internship period offers them a great opportunity to test that out. It's like dating a little bit, right? And at the end of that, mostly organizations make a choice to say, is this somebody that I would actually want to go out there and make an offer to, and would like to see them part of my organization? So that's one path of bringing people in from colleges. The other one is, of course, you run a process on college, right? Which is really you do a presentation, or you have a longevity of engagement initiatives that you do with a particular college, and then you open up applications that people would then make to the organization. And therefore, I think it's important at that point to ensure that your resume does justice to what you have studied, the area that you have specialized in, and what you have learned through your schooling period, right? Whether it is through schooling or through college, what do you bring to the table? Because consulting life requires the ability to have strong interpersonal skills, a strong communication skills, convincing skills, right? Beyond just the hard technical skills, if you be, the ability to innovate, the ability to be creative. I think through your resume, it needs to tell a story that you display some of these traits. So the projects that you have done, the internships that you have done in the past, I think need to be able to talk the story of a specialization that you've built, and the gamut of skills and attributes that you bring to bear for the organization. So the resume becomes important with that. The resume is obviously used as a first filter by organizations to say, does it look like a broad fit to us, right? So that's the first bit. Beyond that, depending upon how technical the role is, there could be an online technical test that people would go through just to say that they have the technical aptitude to support that. Otherwise, you would typically use a case based methodology, right, where a case is handed out and you have an opportunity to reflect on that case and respond to the case. Either you could respond offline or you could respond to a panel, right? A panel typically constitutes of senior leaders in the firm who have been around, who understand what the firm culture is all about, and are really testing for both. They're looking for functional skills that you say your resume said you have, as well as test you out from a culture standpoint to say, do we see this individual grow and grow on to be a partner in the firm at a point in time, right? Because that's how the big four, which are partnership firms, really take pride, right? It's about stewardship, it's about building for the future. When you can groom new talent and grow new partners, that's when you know as a firm you're growing and doing well. So that's what's typically looked at in a panel interview process. And you would have HR as a part of a panel, you would have senior partners in the firm who are part of the panel, but that's typically what they're looking for through the hiring process. And nowadays, I think there's a fair amount of AI and other tools that have come in handy, which allow you to try and get a better appreciation for the candidate that you are talking to. So hopefully that responds to folks who would like to make life in a consulting environment. And so that was a little bit of college, but I think I think responding also to experienced hires, right? With the whole shift that is happening to deepening industry capability, intersection between different industries coming together, and newer solutions coming to play. The big four also end up taking a fair amount of people from what is considered as end user companies, whether it is the specialization that they bring, whether it is in telecom, whether it is in retail, whether it is in sustainability, infrastructure, you name it, right? You would need people who are subject matter experts and deep in that area, because then they come in as specialists and they work with the other consulting folks, because that team then is a team that understands the functional nuance or the sectoral nuance well and has the consulting skill sets that can solve for a client. So that becomes another entry point. But I think the ability to display the fact that you are deep expert in your area and you understand the business context, right? So, I understand telecom well, great. But do I understand how the telecom business is run? Do I know how to optimize that business, right? I think those become things that if you have, you need to be able to bring that to bear, because that's what your client, i.e., the professional services organization, is selling to other companies, right? Saying that we can do this for you. That's the skill set that you need to be able to offer. So that's my suggestion. And a panel will be a normal process that you would encounter if you're being hired at a director level or above in a big four. But be sure that you will be tested, you'll go through some grilling interviews, because you need to understand that for the big four, there is the brand permission that they have. There's a brand that they have to live up to, and therefore the people that they bring on to, they need to be very careful about that, because you know what, when you're part of a big four, when you're part of a professional services business, you're making recommendations. That recommendations impact your client and your client's end clients, right? And therefore professional services firm need to have people that are not just better than what your end client could have sometimes. So I think that's something to keep in mind. So hopefully I've tried to unpack a little bit about the whole hiring process and what happens behind in hiring in professional services firms.
Yes, I think that was very, very informative and deep. I have one more question just to add to that is, what could go wrong if I'm high? Where could I go wrong with the Big Four if I'm applying for a job? What are the 2 or 3 common mistakes that sometimes candidates end up making with you?
I think there is look, collaboration, interpersonal effectiveness are very important skills in a professional services business. You can't be a solo player, right? I mean, as a solo player, you could be a specialist in an area, but if you don't know how to collaborate across different teams, not just the firm's teams, but even client teams, then you're not an effective player. So sometimes the need to be able to present your case in a very strong manner tends to highlight the I a bit too much, right? But whilst it's good to highlight the I, it's about the we finally to say, what did the I contribute to the we, and what therefore was the outcome? I think that's where people sometimes, when they want to fly their flag a bit too much, forget about the fact that you need to be able to say, how did the I contribute to the final impact, and how were you part of a team to make an impact on outcome happen? I think that's what I see as a challenge mostly. Sometimes people are only about we, and then it becomes a struggle to say, yeah, but then what did you do as a part of it? And sometimes there is so much of I that you start worrying to say, is this person really a team player? Will he or she be able to pull through a team, or do they have sharp elbows that will cause issues on the team, right? So I think that's one thing that I typically end up finding, the inability of candidates to present their case in a very fair, justified, balanced manner.
So then, Unmesh, when you look back at your entire career and the people you've hired, you've worked with, uh, and if you think about some of the best employees that you've had, what were those traits or those competencies that they brought to the table which has helped them deliver at high levels? So, like you said, it's not an individual's quality, it's also at the end of the day an outcome, right? Delivering at high levels. So, what are some of those qualities and competencies?
So, as I reflect on this, could be a repetition a little bit of what I've already said, right? But if you look at, you get to operate like almost a quasi CEO of different companies in a consulting life, right? Because you get in there, work with the leadership, fix issues, solve issues, move out to the next client, right? Now, if I look at all of that, then, and I think some of the skills that I talked about, having the ability, analytical skills is important. Uh, Ability to, as I said, gather data, derive insight, and then be able to establish a hypothesis, prove it, unprove it, work through all of that. Communication is important, both interpersonal. Interpersonal communication is important, written and oral, both are important, right? Because every word you write, PowerPoints are a necessary evil as a part of consult life, right? But even if you are storytelling a client to say why is there a need to make a change happen, you need to be able to influence, you need to be able to convince. Third, you need to be a strong team player, and we talked about that. You need to bring clear specialization, but you also need to be a strong team player who knows how do I complement a team well, and how do I work and carry well with the team. Creativity and innovation is becoming more and more important, because the power of an idea in today's time lasts barely for a couple of days. And therefore, the need to constantly reinvent, constantly look around the corners and on the edges to say what else can happen here is going to be a very important trait. And adaptability, I think, is important, right? Because constant learning agility is the way, because you need to come out smarts compared to your client. Otherwise, why should your client even talk to you or engage with you, right? So I think those, in my mind, are attributes. But I think the one thing, curiosity is important, and I've seen people who are successful are curious, who try to understand why and why not, right? And constantly are therefore pushing the envelope, and who have a high sense of ownership, because you can't work in consulting if you need supervision. I mean, that's not a life for you. If you need a boss all the time, then this may not be the life for you, right? You need to be comfortable knowing what the piece of the puzzle that you have responsibility for, taking ownership for above and beyond, not just for your piece of work, but to say, how does this piece fit into the broader outcome that we're trying to, and push for the broader outcome, not just for the impact that you're making as a part of that. So curiosity and ownership are two elements that will differentiate and accelerate people going forward. And obviously, I think having a strategic bent of mind will only provide you much more complex opportunities to work on, and that will accelerate your career.
That's brilliant. That sounds really great. So, Unmesh, these were your insights that I was seeking. And now we have a couple of questions also from the audience with whom we ran a poll. And I
Yeah,
think these are best suited for you to answer.
yeah.
How can one decide that this is the ideal job for them? Like, what are the parameters that I should look at when I'm deciding it, because there are so many permutations and combinations, whether it's the opportunity or the career path or even the prestige or even the monies. So at what point, what are the parameters and how would you rate them in the order of priority for me to decide?
Like when you have told you this too, right? I always keep telling people that you are best when you're working at the intersection of your passion, your strengths, and your aspirations. Right? When you're working on these three, then you have a good chance of being happy and lead a fulfilling life. Now, when I talk about strengths, it doesn't therefore mean that you only work on your strength and ignore what is not considered as a strength. You need to look around your strengths and consider what are ancillary strengths. And if there are genuine gaps in your skill set, there are genuine gaps in what you bring to the table, you do need to work around them, right? You cannot be as good as what you are with your strengths, but you need to know how to navigate those well, right? So that's the first element of that. And therefore, clearly you're best when you are working at the intersection of your strength, passion, and aspiration. Now, having said that, I think it's important to understand what a particular, even if it's not professional service, what does a particular role or an organization provide you with, right? With respect to opportunity to make an impact, what are you going to learn? What is the opportunity to make an impact? What is the broader opportunity around skill building, the working exposure that you're going to get, and of course, we can't forget vitamin M, which is the monetary rewards that come with the effort that you're going to put into all of this. So all of them become a factor. But if you're beginning your career, then what is the most important thing? The most important thing is, are you going to join a place that is going to provide you a great learning opportunity? Is it going to provide you give you exposure to a variety of things, because that's what the generation of today values, which is really experiences. So is it going to get you great experiences? And the third element is exposure. Are you going to be exposed to some great leaders? Those are elements to keep in mind, right? So I think, and therefore, are you going to be working on stuff that you are excited with? And I'm hoping that you have studied things that you are excited with, right? I mean, you're not a typical case of I become a doctor, but I never wanted to be one, or become an engineer, but I never wanted to be one. That's a separate story. But the assumption is you've studied and you've deepened capability and you've built specialization in an area because you're excited with that. And then which organization provides you a platform to go out there and bring your skills to bear, right? And in the process, you learn new things, you get better exposure, meet greater leaders, meet other external leaders, and therefore you hone your skills when you're beginning your career. That becomes a key yardstick. And therefore, sometimes it's okay if that's not the highest paying job, right? Because you need to understand that a career is not 100-minute dash, right? A 100-meter dash, right? It is a marathon. And much as the younger generations hate me saying that, right? But it is a marathon. And therefore, the lens that you can take is what Reid Hoffman talks about, is tours of duty, right? Every 1 or 2 years, take a checkpoint in your career to say, what are you learning? What are you building? What's the next tour of duty? If that's your next tour of duty, then what do you need to do now that you're ready for the next tour of duty? So that's my submission to people, to say, how do you know whether this career is a fit for you, whether this organization is a fit for you, is really look at all of this lens and see if you find culturally you connect with that organization. I think that's the long answer to a rather short question.
No, that's fine. The common question that normally emerges from that is that when I'm starting my career, if I am okay to work in a great company if I don't look at the monies and I get that exposure, I get those leaders, will that impact my chances in the future of having that kind of parity with someone else who would have started with me and probably gone for more money? So I think that's always this insecurity. What would you say to that?
I mean, think about it, right? I mean, there are people who've finished their graduations and gone and worked for captives. Captives typically would end up paying you higher compensation compared to others. But you also need to understand that in a captive environment, the word captive itself tells you what the nature of work is, right? There is an element of predictability about that work. The newness or the innovativeness quotient is relatively limited. I'm not saying all captives are like that, but there's an element around that. Right? And question is, do you want to always be excited with saying, oh, those guys are making more money? Or the question is saying, you are far better prepared to embrace newer opportunities in your life compared to them, because they may not have had the exposure that you may crunch in a 2-year period working for a professional services firm, because you would have not worked with just one organization. You are employed by one organization, but you now have the access to the God knows what. In 2 years time, you would have worked on 10, 15 different clients on in and helping them with different situations, solving different kinds of problems. That's not something that some of those colleagues would have experienced. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Look, money comes, money goes. On a long term, what is yours will happen. But I think it's important that you're constantly learning, you're building the skills for the future, you have a good trajectory, and you're getting to really come through as a strong leader going forward.
That's really nice. There's a very interesting question, the next one, and I think it kind of speaks of how people are concerned about delivering the goods. In the first month, right? This is for a fresher or even somebody who's joining a new company. What should they have done that they feel and they feel confident that they are on the right path?
So professional services firms, I'm going to take the professional services firm lens, is all about the network, right? It's all about the relationships. It's about who you know, who you can call, who you can ping or tap for the expertise that they bring. And therefore, using the first month to soak in, if you're coming straight from campus, there's a whole transition. You're making campus to corporate. Therefore, you'll go through a rigmarole of trainings that a typical professional services firm will mandate you to do, because that's our way of acculturizing you into the organization. So attending all the trainings, understanding, building a deeper understanding of the business, not just your business, but how upstream and downstream businesses get impacted because of your business is important. And then building connections with others in the firm, right? In your business, beyond your business, getting to know people, right? Because finally, professional services is a people's business, right? You need to work with other colleagues and consultants and be able to leverage each other's strengths, right? There's an element in professional services firms we talk about, it's almost an apprenticeship model, right? You bring newer team members in, you groom them, you train them. Initially, when you come in, you do all the grunt work, which is collecting data, making PowerPoints, writing minutes, all of that. But to be fair, some of that is going through the phases of developing the skills required in a consulting environment. Now, some of that is going through the apprenticeship model, but that's how you get groomed. So the first month is really about acculturation, building the relationships, getting to know the business, getting to know how you make money or lose money, because then you can spring off from that to say, here's what I can help with on our future projects that you do with different clients.
I like that. Really nice. Thank you for that brilliant insight. We are now getting into the third section of this whole interview. This is the fun section. So I call it the quick hire and fire round. So we're going to be as straight and direct about it. So one sentence answers for this particular thing, which is,
bring it on.
What quality in a person when they come for an interview or someone who's looking for a job is a sure shot hire for you? Like definitely a hit.
Passion, drive, integrity.
Okay, fantastic. And what is a sure shot miss, like a surefire?
Coming back again, I think integrity. If you find issues with respect to integrity of the individual, and I think it's energy, right? Because professional services firms thrive at a particular energy. And if you don't have that vibe, that energy that you can bring on, and that hunger, right? Connecting to the first one, I think imagine you taking somebody like that to a client.
I think that's a really nice one. I love the way you put it, because I could even sense you feeling it, even as you said it, given that you've already had so many years of experience. Yeah. But yes, I think great perspective on energy. It is true. It can take a whole team up, or it can bring the whole energy down, depending on how you bring it to the table.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Which is your favorite interview question?
My favorite one is, tell me about a time when you had to when your point of view was different to what your stakeholders' point of view was, what was it? What did you do? Walk me through your thinking.
Wow. Okay. See, that's the kind of homework I would want all job aspirants to really do. Properly make notes of all these questions and produce the answers that will be most authentic also, and at the same time contributing towards their career path.
Yep.
Fantastic. Unmesh, this has been fabulous. Some great, great insights. If you had to give one key advice to anybody, any job aspirant out there, whether it's a fresher, whether it's someone looking for a change, or someone who's lost their job, or even a C suite, what is that one key advice you would give them?
I don't know. I have the age to give an advice or the experience to give an advice because I call myself still a learner. But I think my one piece of advice, and especially for people looking at professional services, right? I'm going to say, um, work hard, right? Learn constantly, and if you really want to make an impact, and when I say impact, if you really want, and a lot of organizations talk about the triple bottom line, right? People, profit, and the planet. Then professional services is a place which allows you that remit, not to just do this for one organization, but for multiple organizations, right? So if you're looking for purpose to say, what am I making happen? Then if you want to make impact happen, then that's what professional services firms are all about. Coming to people who potentially in today's difficult times are going to see impact due to right sizing, etc. I think my only submission to them is, look, things happen, and use the time that you will have now. Yes, it's a slow market. Opportunities are going to be far and few, but 6 months, a year from now, the market should start to resurrect. At that point, organizations will need people. What have you done with your time that you were not employed becomes important. So use that time to really reflect on what your strengths are. What can you do with those strengths? Invest in learning new things that sit at the intersection of the passion, strengths, and aspirations, and build newer skills. Figure out what will make you more relevant to times going forward. So invest. There's so much of MOOC open programs available today, very affordable. So invest in learning, offer up your time to coach, mentor people. So many startups, if you bring certain specialization, startups could do with your experience. There is so much of pain and hurt outside. You could go out and work pro bono with some of the NGOs and other things. But in the process, if I were to be hiring at the end of this pandemic and I would come across candidates like these, I would really be looking at saying, fine, things happen, but what did you do over the last 1 year? How have you stayed relevant? How have you used your skills or bettered your skills? So that's my submission, I think. And I think in India, there is now starting to be better awareness and acceptance with respect to saying individuals could have made a choice or organizations could have had to go through difficult times and therefore right size. But stay focused, stay relevant. There are better times coming soon.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. In fact, you know what you said in this entire answer of yours, you just sold a professional services and consulting job to me. I'm thinking of putting in my application now. And second, yes, what can we do in these times if we have the time right now and companies aren't recruiting? And I think everything came to what you started with, which is work hard. So whether it's contributing, stay busy, do things, make yourself useful and relevant, I think those are some amazing and important nuggets. In fact, it reminded me of this quote by Thomas Jefferson who said that the harder I work, the luckier I get. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think only on the closing, I think I do want to say, Vinny, that the most important thing is to ensure physical, your emotional, and your mental energies are at peak performance. Right? Times like these, the chances are you start to slack out emotionally, mentally, and then also physically. And then your chances of revival start to diminish. It's important that you take care of yourself, body, soul, mind, and heart, and constantly keep learning. The tide will turn. You need to bring on what's due to you, but you need to be ready for that.
Fabulous. I love that quote. And thank you so much. This has been a truly, truly insightful interview.
Very much, Jenny, and good luck to you and Team Person.
Thank you.